And our speaker today is Steve Fransen. He is a forage and extension agronomist with Washington State University. He has many years, almost 30 years in service with WSU. So a ton of experience with forage. He's kind of the man, if you will, when it comes to this. And he'll be talking today about grass quality principles. He's got some show and tell, and should be a great talk. So we'll welcome Steve and let him get started.
Thanks a million, Nicole, and it's great to be here with you all today. I've looked forward to this ever since she got a hold of me, and actually I changed my plans dramatically. I was going to, tomorrow I would head out to go to Cincinnati for American Society of Agronomy meetings, and so when she called I said, oh, well then I'll fly out of SeaTac versus out of Pasco, so it gives me a chance to come and visit with you guys a little bit. I'm looking forward to this. Do you guys, if I throw a couple names out, just nod if you remember this. John Gillies, Woody Bernard, Dave Grusenmeyer. Okay, so they have blonde hair just about like my blonde hair. Just to tell you about how old we all are. Anyway, what I'd like to do before we ever get started is I'm going to give you a test. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to pass these out, and you have pencils? Okay. And so what I want you to do is we've got some questions, actually 9 of them, that I'm going to show here on the screen. It's A, B, C, D. I don't think there's an E, but there could have been in there. And so there's a little bit of info to put on the top just to kind of let me know about you and your farming operation. And I want everybody to get one, even the federal folks and the state folks. And I want everybody, no stone to be unturned. Okay? And hopefully, this is the goal, is by the time we get done, we will have answered all these questions that are there, and you'll have some sort of a idea where we're coming from with this, okay? So everybody's got a test? Okay, so let's start with question number 1. And I promise we're going to go through these. So, question number 1 is, which grass is not commonly grown in Whatcom County? Okay, Lolium perennial, Lolium multiflorum, Panicum virgatum, or Dactylus glomerata. So those are obviously those are the scientific names of grasses that are very important, and you grow 3 out of the 4. 3 out of the 4. So on your answer sheet, under the pre-test, you write A, B, C, or D. A, B, C, or D. Okay? Nobody said this was going to be an easy test. Okay, ready? Okay, question number 2. For high quality grass forage, it all starts with the cultivar and the seeding rate. Yes, no, well, maybe. Depends on how I manage the crop. Depends on how I manage the crop. We're on question number 2, guys, so we'll get back to question 1. Let him have. So this is question 2. So use your pencils. A, B, C, or D. So yes, no, maybe, or it depends on how I manage the crop. Okay, you got her? I don't think he's, George, he doesn't have a pencil. I have one. It's in mine. It's in my backpack. Okay, so we'll flip back to question 1 so these these guys can get to question one. Okay, so question one is this. What grass is not commonly grown, or grown at all, probably has never been grown? I can't even imagine growing it, okay, in Whatcom County. I actually tried growing this grass on the west side and I could never even get it to germinate, let alone grow it, okay? So Lowland perennial, Lowland multiflorum, Panicum virgatum, or Dactylus glomerata. So obviously these are the scientific names of 3 or 4 different grasses. Okay, so A, B, C, or D. Okay, so here's question 2. High quality grass forage, it all starts with the cultivar and the seeding rate. Yes, no, maybe, or it depends on how I manage the crop. Okay, you ready for number 3? Okay, question 3. When are the windows open for replanting or renovating a grass or Whatcom County grass field? And what seeding rate would you probably use at that point in time in that window? Okay, so there's a kind of a 2-part thing. So the first option is the 1st of March to the 1st of May. That would be a spring. 1st of August to the end of August, and the seeding rate would be 30 pounds per acre. Okay. The second option is April 1st to May 20th, August 20th to September 25th. And that seeding rate would be 20 pounds per acre. And finally, this option, May 1st to May 20th, September 15th to October 15th, 10 pounds per acre. So you have to make them, these all have to jive together, okay? Honestly, the last one, you can plant and get stands anytime. Just, just real more seed, okay? So, A, B, C, or D. It's a little confusing because I have 2 things that I want you to think about. Okay, you got this one? Okay, I'm saying you're right, I'm sorry. Okay, ready? Number 4. What is the proper cutting height, or we might call stubble height, for consistently producing high quality grass silage? 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inches, 6 inches, or it really doesn't matter, it's just simply grass. So A, B, C, D, or E in this case. So 1, 2, 3, 6, or doesn't matter. And I'm thinking about your cool season grasses that you traditionally are going to grow in this area, in your fields, for silage, for pasture, for hay, whatever. Okay? Got it? Okay, number 5. They get easier. They get easier. Dairymen should plan for this number of grass silage harvests per normal growing season to achieve a balance of high yield and high quality. Okay? 2 harvests, 3 harvests, 4 harvests, or 5 harvests. 2, 3, 4, or 5. Well, 6 is oftentimes like a 5, but you pushed it. You pushed it. Okay, got it in your mind? 2, 3, 4, or 5 harvests. And I would say that what would be traditional on most of our operations if we're doing a good job of managing our grass for silage on the west side? It's not going to be any different. Okay? It's going to be the same. Okay, number 6. Highest digestibility ryegrass silage will be produced in which month? The highest quality, and now I'll show you some data from our work that we did in Buckley that will define, without a question, the highest quality and the lowest quality. I could ask you the same question, except what would be the lowest quality silage that you would produce that will negatively is a pretty strong word, that will not really give you the kind of animal performance that you would expect from it. Okay, so what my question though is, when is the highest quality grass forage that you're going to produce? When is it growing? So, cutting in May, June, July, August, or basically September or October. About right now, or maybe just a few weeks ago. Okay, so you got your answer? Okay. Now, hopefully by now you're beginning to think, he's going to talk about principles, right? Here. So are you kind of seeing where I'm targeting some principles? Okay, question 7. Acid soils are typical in Whatcom County. What should be done? You're wrong. They're not really a problem. Okay? Judge acidity based on your water pH. Judge the acidity based on calcium chloride pH. Apply biosolids and amend these acid soils. So I'm going to push the soils side of your brain a little bit. So, not a problem. It's based on water acidity, based on calcium chloride acidity, or it's you do something like biosolids to basically try to amend it. Notice I didn't use the word lime. Okay, question 8. Sugars and grasses are important for what reason? Because sugars and grasses increase as the nitrogen that you apply through your manure fertilizers increases. So there's a positive relationship, okay? This decreases, the sugars decrease as you apply nitrogen from manure or commercial fertilizers. Needed for regrowth and winter hardiness. Interacts with water and growth. This is what we're looking at with these sugars. So I'm looking, there's 2 answers here that are really pretty acceptable if I'm thinking of just one. Just one. But there's really 2 answers that are really, really close. And actually both are true. One is just a little more truer than the other one. Okay, how you doing? Got it? Okay, let's hit number 9. Steve's current work, because you remember well maybe some of you don't, but I was in Puyallup for a long time, and then I moved to the west or the east side over in Prosser, and that changed my focus a little bit. And so I'm going to show you a couple of slides of what I do now. Still working with grass. Still working with grass. So the grasses that I'm working with are for llamas, dairy cows, biofuels, or yep, he's gone crazy and we're now working with lawns. So what do you think? You think I went crazy yet? Okay. Are you ready? Okay. This is another thing that happened when you have your 22nd anniversary of your 39-and-a-half birthday. Okay. Okay, and what did you press to do that? F5. F5. Okay, there we go. So we're going to talk about these ideas, these principles, and there's a zillion applications with what we're going to talk about today. Your farm is going to be a little bit different. Your operation is going to be a little bit different. But if you understand some of the things that we talk about today, you can apply these concepts in your own operation. And I would venture to say they are going to help you in the future. May actually even work you out of a problem that you might have now. So that's the reason when I talked to Nicole, I wanted to emphasize the idea that we're really talking about principles and not trying to make a single application across the board. So you're all probably very interested in this component of this ecosystem out here called these animals. These are consumers in my eyes. These are the consumers. We have to satisfy these. These are no different than you and I when we're watching the TV and commercials are coming on. We're the consumer. We go to a store. We're a consumer. And so all these individuals are trying to satisfy us with what our needs are. So what is the feedstock material here that's going to satisfy these consumers right there? Obviously, it's this stuff right down here that they're on. So how do we manage that to get the most out of it? Recognizing we have 365 days a year. Every day the temperature's a little bit different. Every day the day length is a little bit different. Every day we have different amounts of moisture. Every day this ecosystem changes. And it's so dynamic. And so you've got all this weather stuff going on. Then you've got these guys going on. And then you've got this going on. Then below that is really where the action is. So to answer one of the questions is, it's not the crop, it's not the grass, it's not the seeding rate, it's the soil environment is going to dictate how good a grass, what quality grass, when you're going to harvest it, when you're going to produce it, all that stuff, that's going to come back to your soil. So as you screw the soil up or you enhance the soil, you in fact are going to gain benefits from that. It's not, and I hate to say this from a forage agronomy perspective, it's not the plants. It really is the soil that runs the show. We just happen to have a really nice environment in which we can work with. And we grow these things, and these are our consumers that are then converting this. And what's this taking in? It's taking in water, it's taking in nutrients. It uses this sunlight up here called photosynthesis, growing yield. Different amount of yield, different kinds of quality. That these girls here are going to then give us something in return. Hopefully you're going to make some money off of this. And we're going to have something to eat off of it. This kind of makes the whole system work. But it's really the soil environment that really runs the whole show. Although I love to take the credit for the grass. But it doesn't work that way. So principles are really fundamental rules or doctrine. That's the reason we're going to talk about this. Understanding principles first, then applying them to your farm or situation. And so there's many applications to any one principle that we're going to talk about. They should guide your decision-making process. And you should be able to recognize costs and returns based upon that. And it should support your farm environment. If we're proposing something, we test something, and it goes the wrong way, you need to know that. We look for those kinds of things that go the wrong direction. And so you're alerted to that right away. It's a lot harder to dig yourself out of a hole than not dig the hole to start with. Okay? We in fact do too dang much digging. And then we're trying to pile or fill the hole back in. Okay? So if we would spend a little time thinking about something and not just looking at this, that tells that this is what we're going to do. Because later on, we may be refilling that hole back in with a lot more of this. Okay? And it should enhance, I would say this is showing my blonde hair again, but should enhance your family quality of life, because everything begins and ends within the family unit. You know, so if things work, family's happy, you're making money, things are working, life is good. If things are a little upset, soil's not working, the crops aren't growing, the cows aren't milking, things are not in the best situation. So things work together, not totally independent of each other. So what do I mean by high quality? Forage yield is important. I'm not going to say it's not, because it is, because they're not going to eat and produce anything if they don't actually eat it. So we got to produce it. But quality is one of the things that makes a huge difference whether you're going to get 80 pounds or 90 pounds from that grass quantity that you're feeding. Can you, I'll just ask you a quick question, can you substitute, in your opinion, can you substitute grain for quality forage? Everybody that says that think you can, raise your hand. Okay, if you think that you can produce, okay, so that's unanimous. So you don't believe then that the grain, so, you know, my farm in Iowa that I'm producing all this corn on, why are you buying all that? If you're just telling me right now that you can produce good production with changing quality of forage. Pardon?
You changed the question. You said, can you substitute the one for the other?
That's right.
But when you're talking energies and proteins and digestibilities, that's a totally different thing.
Okay, let's talk about energy, protein, digestibility. Can you equal animal performance if we had grain versus we had quality forage?
You will limit your grain. You will limit your grain availability and balance if you do not have quality forage.
That's exactly correct. And there's been numerous studies that have shown that if you have low quality forage, you can feed all the grain in the world, and it doesn't really substitute. And if you have high quality forage, you can almost minimize your grain to a very dull roar and still get very good performance. So why is it in these plants that we are looking at that allows you to do that? You knew that you could do this. I'll bet every one of you knew that this was actually possible. Why is this possible? Now, I'm not going to say you're going to get it on every growth period that you're going to harvest. Probably not. But there are some that are really higher quality, and some that are not. So I like to think in terms of let's take the very best that we can get and make sure that stuff is what we are going to save. The lower quality stuff, maybe it isn't quite as important. But when we talk in terms of what that animal is going to consume, how quickly she's going to digest that, and how that's going to turn into some sort of animal product that we're going to sell, that's where quality shines. And yield does not. But yield's important because you've got to have yield for her to eat. Yeah?
Okay, so let me get this straight from what you're hearing. And I'll preface this by what I'm trying to learn from my own little dairy business. I have a very small herd, and I'm wanting to develop a basically all forage grass fed dairy business. People are telling me you can't do it without grain.
Not true.
That's what I wanted to hear.
It's not true.
But you ain't going to get your 100 pound.
You're not going to get 100 pounds. I would fully agree.
50% of your milk check on grain, what difference does it make?
That's exactly right. On the bottom line, when you look at your input costs and you get your returns, the more that you can depend on your perennials that you're growing yourself, you're going to probably make a lot more money in the long run. That's the reason these principles of grass quality are so important. Well, I wanted to talk to you about that. Okay, so don't expect the highest quality forage to be produced from every field, every cutting. It doesn't happen. I couldn't make it happen. I tried 18 years. And it just doesn't happen. Mother Nature is very powerful and plays hands on us that we're not prepared for. So you take what she gives you and you use it the very best you possibly can. Okay, so these are points that I'm actually going to hit now that we're going to talk about. Let's talk about your farm environment. This is kind of our climate in Whatcom County and even Linden in particular. Okay, and this is max and minimum temperatures, precip, growing degree days, etc. Your farm soils. I want to talk about soils for a while. I already kind of hammered on that, but soil quality, slopes, wet areas, dry areas, water tables, soil tests. I'm going to show you some soil test results from a good friend of mine. She works with Skagit farmers. She shared me some soil tests from this area. And I want to talk about some of those things and a water pH versus the calcium chloride pH. Okay, have you ever heard of those? Okay, we're going to talk about that. And this is something that I think we need to start talking about. We've ignored a lot of this, some good science that we need to talk about. Then let's just briefly talk about the layout of your farm. Everyone is different. That's the reason I love to go to farms. As you can probably tell, I came from a farm. So I love to be on farms. And so we'll talk about that. Most of where we're going to talk about is going to be on the fields. The history of applying nutrients. Notice I didn't say manure, simply nutrients, rotations, selection, soil limitations, yields, quality, etc. And then finally, as I said, it works. This is a family business. And so even when we have big mega dairies, they're still by and large family businesses. So the principle that I want you to put in your mind first is this. And I want to spend a couple minutes talking about this. And this is different than what I was ever taught in school, probably you as well. This is a kind of our own creation, done with our research here on the west side. We were taught in school that the forage growing season starts in the spring. Right? Everything starts in the spring. You're done with winter, everything starts in the spring. And it sounded like a really good idea for a long time. Unfortunately, it's wrong. It's really wrong, unfortunately. Where it really starts, our forage calendar, our forage cycle begins in the fall. Begins in the fall. And I'm going to show you some, Nicole was so kind to dig me some plants, and I'm going to show you real quickly why this is important. But in the summertime, and we're going to show you this, in the summertime, the plants are shedding their roots. Okay? That's what we're doing right here. We're shedding roots. In the fall, those plants start to regenerate new roots. What's the color of new roots? White, exactly. What's the color of roots that are dying or shedding? Brown, tan, brown. How about black? Is that good? Is that a good thing? Absolutely. You got to shed and get rid of all those old roots so you can grow new ones. And this produces organic matter in the soil. Is organic matter in the soil important? Yes. Absolutely. So where the heck do you think organic matter in the soil came from? The plant shed roots. Exactly. So this is part of that dynamics that I was talking about that fits together. Okay, so in the fall then, the plants are going to, first thing they're going to do is they're going to generate new white roots. And then you're going to have a kick and yield. And it's going to start growing. So it's going to look like, and thank you so much for bringing the stuff, because they brought a nice tarp, because I will apologize to the group because I'm probably going to take this all over the place and get everything wet and messy. But that's just how I do it. Because I want you to see. If you see what I'm talking about, okay, you're never going to forget it. You'll never forget it from now on, okay? You will remember exactly what I'm talking about. So, this is a perennial grass that we're working with. Actually, it looks like perennial ryegrass. Yep. So, this is perennial ryegrass that we're working with here. And this one is, once this plant becomes, quote, an adult, not the first year, About 18 months after the seed is planted, this will be an adult plant, okay? Before that, it's a juvenile plant, and it's not going to produce or shed any roots. It's got to be an adult plant before it actually starts shedding roots. So here we're shedding roots in the summertime. We're going into this period right here, which is the winter time, and then guess what it's going to do? It's going to shed roots again. But we have white roots being produced here. We have white roots being produced right here. Then we go into the summertime, and we have root shedding again. So twice a year, the plants, these cool season grasses, are going to produce new white roots, and they're going to shed old roots. So what are these? This is perennial ryegrass. Lowlium. Question 1. Lowlium perennial ryegrass. Lowlium perennium. Right? Perennial ryegrass. So is this one of the answers? No. This is, because remember I said, which of these grasses don't you grow? Well, obviously you grow Lowlium perennium right here. Okay? Let's just assume this looks like wheat or triticale. But let's assume this is annual ryegrass. Okay? Annual ryegrass. Lowlium, what's the genus of ryegrass? Lowlium, right? So Lowlium multiflorum. Okay? And then the other one, nice grass, has flat stems. One of the very few grasses that we grow that actually have flat stems. You can walk out in the field anytime, any month, and you can feel down at the base, and it will have a flat stem. That's called orchard grass. And the name of orchard grass is? Well, that's a good guess. A good guess. Dactylus glomerata. Okay, Dactylus glomerata. Okay, that is orchard grass. So, Lowlium perennium is perennial rye. Lowlium multiflorum is annual rye, and Dactylus glomerata is orchard grass. So what was that fourth one?
Right answer?
It was the right answer. Very good. Very good. It was called Panicum virgatum, right? Switchgrass. Switchgrass. You hear it in the news all the time. I'm actually going to show you a couple of slides of that, because that's what I work with. We've been working with switchgrass for over 10 years now for biofuel. And it's got a tremendous amount of potential. Okay, so what I want you to see, and we're going to take just a couple seconds here to look at this, okay? Now I'm going to come around and I want you to see this. So here you see the new white roots. Okay, see all these roots there? They're previous, so they're dying, right? Okay, so you see that? See the new white roots? Right here. See those new white roots? Not many new white roots in that, is there? Well, but there should be. Let me see if I can find another. Would you like to help me? Would you like to help me? Both of them. Okay, what we're going to do is get some more orchard grass, because that's got good white roots on it. Okay, so there's good white roots. Okay. Okay, can you see the white roots there? Okay, so I want you to see white roots here, okay? We're going to take you around. I want you to see white roots. So tomorrow, because we're going to talk till probably 6 or 7 o'clock here. So tomorrow, get your shovel out, go to the field, and I want you to dig some plants and wash them off, just like this. I want you to look for new white roots. You should see a lot of brown roots even dark brown, even black roots, because those are the ones that are decomposing, becoming soil organic matter. You already are convincing me that organic matter is important in the soil. Why? Why is organic matter important in the soil? What's it do? What's it do? Pardon?
Keeps it from compacting.
It certainly does. It really helps in soil compaction. What about as kind of a bank account for some nutrients? A great bank account for nutrients. And it's a slowly degrading bank account for nutrients. So it's got multiple things other than that it makes roots important. Taking up nutrients, taking up water. It doesn't come out of the atmosphere, it comes out of the soil. That's part of why it's important, okay?
And it supports the life that lives down there, right?
It certainly does.
It's got to be there for that.
Yep, because there's a lot of biological life in the ground that works on it. Yes?
Is this graph affected very much by moisture levels?
No.
Irrigate? No?
Nope. Does not. Now that's a great question. This is only really affected by one environmental outside input. And guess what that is? It's not temperature. It's not irrigation.
Harvesting.
Harvesting? Not harvesting.
Sunlight?
Soil. Say that again.
Sunlight?
And what part of sunlight is important? What part of sunlight is important? Have you noticed what's happened in the last month?
Yeah.
What's happened?
Less sun.
Shorter days.
That's shorter days. And what's that called? What's that called? What is these short days called? Photo period. Photo period. Photo period. So the plants, do you think these plants are finding that signal? These shorter days? And what do you think that signal is telling these plants to do?
Shut down.
Shut down. And what do they do when they shut down?
Less photosynthesis, less production.
And what's going on? What did you just see?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hurry up with the new roots?
The roots are now going to start shedding again, aren't they?
Shedding, yeah.
We are coming into this period right here, aren't we?
Yeah.
We are maxed out. We are starting to head down this slippery slope right here. Okay? So our window is almost closed here this fall for root development. So what also happens when we produce new roots? Just take a quick guess. Do you think we have any influence on next year's yield?
Yeah.
And why would next year's yield be affected by what we're doing the last month? Because the amount of sunlight is a trigger to make new growing points.
Cut it off.
Well, you can definitely cut it off.
Harvest would eliminate sunlight.
So if you cut, and how low would you need to cut to do that?
3 inches.
3 inches. You cut less than 3 inches, you graze less than 3 inches, what's going to happen? You've taken all that photosynthate ability away, and guess what's happened? You've now limited how much roots you're going to produce and how many apical meristems, i.e. growing points, you're going to produce in the fall. Now guess what's going to happen next year? What's this curve right here? That's our yield. That's our primary yield. Right here it's going to come off in first cutting. And guess when this primary yield then is created? Right here. Right here. Right there. So if you understand these principles, you'll be way ahead. Okay, so now we know that in the fall we're going to create new roots. Even if you don't irrigate, the plants are going to still create new roots. As many? No. As many apical meristems? No. But they will still do it. Even in drought soils, they still do it. They don't like it, but they'll still do it. And the reason is because the photo period was the signal to do that. Now we're into these really short days and we've got a new signal. So the new signal is telling the plants we're going to go into root shedding, which it's going to be right now, and it's going to be root shedding all summer, or all winter, excuse me, right here, and then in the spring, guess what's going to happen? A new signal. Day lengths are increasing. So then the signal is to start creating new roots. You don't get very many growing points though in the spring. That's the problem. So the problem is that you don't get as many apical meristems in the spring as you do in the fall. So the yield that you're going to get in 2013 was pretty much established already. Already. Yes?
I just have a question on the photosynthesis. If they're establishing roots deeply with photosynthesis, would it be more effective to, during that period, to leave the grass even a little longer than 3 inches?
What do you guys think?
Yeah.
She's asking, would it be better to leave the grass a little bit longer?
You know.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well,
So,
if you're going to cut your field for a reason, do it after this happens.
well, or you never cut,
Never cut lower than 3 inches.
never cut below 3 inches.
Right. I know that.
That bottom 3 inches, that is the bank account for the grass. We're going to talk about sugars in a few minutes, okay? This is the bank account for the grass. You violate, you cut this, you graze this below this, you've just robbed the bank.
Right.
You were Jesse James. Okay? You robbed the bank. And so that bottom 3 inches doesn't belong to you and it doesn't belong to your animals or your cutter bar. That bottom 3 inches belongs to that plant. It's its bank account. Okay? So what we're looking at is we're going to get our high yield here in the first cutting. Then we're going to get yields in the summertime, but they're always going to be lower because the roots are in a root shedding pattern. Then in the fall, we're going to get this regrowth. So we have these two spikes, spring and fall, just like the old ways looked. But I'm telling you that the beginning of this is not in the spring, it's really in the fall. So if you think about the way you're putting on your nutrients, the way you're irrigating, the way you cut, all of these things are going to have a huge influence on what you're going to produce, not only this year, but next year as well. Okay, so is this just about as clear as mud? Okay, good, because we're going to go on. So let's talk about climate. This is at our house about 2 years ago, and this is the Yakima River. We live right by the Yakima River, and so this is one of those really nice storms that we get through there. Lots of sunshine there, you know, in the wintertime. Pleasant balmy. Okay.
Palm Springs of Washington, right?
The Palm Springs of Washington, that's what they practically call that area. Okay, so let's talk about Whatcom County. So depending on where you are here, 160 to 200 plus frost-free days. We get in Prosser about 165 frost-free days. So you get at least as much, if not more. So we aren't that much different, okay? Coldest month is January. Well, guess what? Coldest month for us is about January. Warmest month is August. Well, guess what? Our warmest is probably either July or August. But here the coldest month is 32, and here it's 75. Almost 76. Okay, so what's this tell you? What's this tell you? You're not real hot in the summer, are you? Not hot in the summer. And you're not that cold in the winter. But you're not that hot in the summer. So these C3 grasses that experience photorespiration, which means that they lose carbon dioxide in the presence of a lot of sunlight in the summertime, that is the kind of grass you're probably going to grow here. And that's the reason Lowland perennial, Lowland multiflorum, and Dactylus glomerata, perennial ryegrass, annual ryegrass, and orchard grass grow well here. Do they grow that well on the east side? They tolerate it. We water the heck out of them, but you've got a much better environment than we have for growing those. Okay, the driest month here is August. I mean, that's an absolute monsoon in terms of water that we would get here in Prosser. Okay, this is, because we only get 6 inches a year. So, I mean, this is your dry month, okay? So that's, of course, the reason why we irrigate. And a lot of you guys irrigate too. Wettest month is coming up here in November. And the most sunshine you get in a month, about 70 days, is, of course, July. So let's understand then, we've got good growing conditions in the summer. It's kind of cool. It's, you may irrigate. If not, you're certainly going to get some moisture. So this is not a bad environment to grow grass. Okay, so let's look at linden. And what I did here was took some local data. I just kind of divided it by quarters. Here's the winter, spring, summer, and fall, if you kind of look at that. So here's your long-term average right here for temperature. About 41, 54 during the spring, 61 in the summertime, back to 43 here in the wintertime. Here's your maximums, up to 63, almost 74 here in Linden during that period, that 3-month period of time. Pretty close to the other ones. In your sunny skies over here, 32, 50, 64, and 32. So you still get quite a bit of sunlight. Is that important? Yeah, because that means you're going to get photosynthesis, doesn't it? And are you going to get photosynthesis in November? A little, not a great deal, but you are going to get some photosynthesis in November. Now, what if you had left 4 inches of growth from your last harvest or your last grazing versus an inch? Which one of those is going to give you more growth during that winter period? The longer one. Which one is going to start the growth earlier in the spring? The longer one. Which one is going to produce more, likely, going to produce more tonnage the following year? So why in the world would we take the cutter bar out and we set it right there at soil level? Why would we do that? Why would we allow the animals to graze it down till you see the grass roots? You can tell whether they're white or brown, standing, 2 yards or 10 yards away. Why would you do that? You won't do that anymore, will you? Okay? Promise me, we're not going to do that. Okay, so saturated soils are problem soils. You already know that. This happens to be a really good one here on the east side, near Prosser actually, and in a lot of rill or flood type irrigation taking place. And okay, traditionally we're going to have alkaline soils, pHs of 7.5, 8, maybe even 8.5. What would you suspect that the pH of this is going to be? Say it again.
3.
3.5, 4, absolutely. When it should be 8. So what's happened here? We've leached out all those bases. What's happened over here over the last eons of time? The natural rain is leaching out all those bases. So we have to replace some of those bases through lime or other kinds of materials to get that soil back in place. But what was interesting to me about this, and what I didn't appreciate when I lived in Puyallup, that I appreciate more living in Prosser, is that the water dynamics in the soil and in the plant in acid soils is tremendously detrimental, tremendously impediment in acid soils compared to alkaline soils. So you may see these acid soils and think, no big deal, really. No big deal. Because things aren't really all that bad. They're worse than what I really thought. Okay, they're really worse. And that's the reason why looking at this calcium chloride pH that we're going to talk about in a minute is so important to think about versus using a water, which we've used for eons. I think Moses probably figured out the first water pH. Okay, but I'm going to suggest to you there's another way to be thinking about how we're going to handle these soils in some of our tests. So, real quickly, in Whatcom County, your soil survey was produced in '92. There's 192 soil descriptions. There's 87 soil series. There's a lot of them. A lot of them here. And so your farm isn't going to have all of these by any means. But to be a successful grass producer, you need to understand this soil resource. That soil is going to have this huge influence on what crop you're going to be able to pick, when you're going to get to harvest it, how much yield you're going to get to harvest it, and really what is the quality of that yield that you're going to be harvesting. In the end of the day, that all comes around how well are your animals going to perform. So, a lot of guys, the first thing that I will ask if you call me on the phone is, what is your soil test information? And we have way too many people across this state, across this nation, who do not soil test. Seldom, almost sometimes never, and I could tell you story after story if we had time. Maybe around midnight we'll talk about that. About some of the problems that have come up because they haven't been following some soil tests. And we've got them on the east side, and I'll bet you 10 to 1, you might have one over here, maybe. maybe. Well, I could be stretching it. You know, I've been known to do that. So soil limiting factors, soil texture, one of those things that you need to be looking at. Soil structure, obviously winter saturation, summer drought, freezing and thawing, nutrient storage and release, change in your CEC, cation exchange capacity, pH, organic matter, and your EC, which is your salinity, leaching of mobile and non-mobile nutrients. Leaching of non-mobile nutrients. Well, he certainly lost it there, didn't he? Can you leach non-mobile nutrients? What do you think? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We have a field, it isn't mine, thank God, where the phosphorus levels at 10 feet are over 100 parts per million. At 10 feet. Now, do you think that they got there just because somebody from Hanford blew up something? No, I don't think so either. So, these nutrients got out there and they got leached down. So these non-mobile nutrients will move, okay? Okay, so a couple of ideas on principles, okay? One of the problems is we don't have enough air in our soil. We get soil compaction. You mentioned soil compaction. That's a huge problem because we don't have air. If we don't have air, guess what we can't get in the soil then? Water. Can't get water in the soil. Okay, so you've got to have air spaces for water to come in. And when we have wet soils, we put a bunch of equipment out there. We run thousands of pounds of animal per acre. Guess what we do? We make concrete. Concrete doesn't have a lot of air spaces. Okay? We don't want concrete here. This isn't what we want to grow, it's concrete. Because it's really hard to extract water and nutrients out of concrete. Okay? So this is important. So this is just one technique of trying to improve aeration in your soils. Okay, let's talk about soil acidity a little bit. So we have, let's say, this is a neutral type soil. Let's just call this a pH 7. And for whatever reason, we have a lot of free hydrogen. out there, free hydrogen. And what is pH? Negative log of hydrogen concentration, right? That's what it is. So you've got all these free hydrogens out there, and the more of these you've got, guess what happens? pH goes down, down, exactly, goes down. So the more of these you got, the more lower that pH is going to go. So what happens then is you've got your soil particle, which are always negative. You have all these positive things around here. Here's the calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium, all these really good cations that we have to have. They've all been replaced by hydrogen. So we have then all of our elements here that we want are out over here. They're not over here. Okay? So is that a problem? That's a problem, because now the plants are going to have a difficult time getting those essential cations. And why is calcium important? What's the deal about calcium? Why would be calcium important? Where is it? It's in milk, isn't it? Exactly. So around every single plant cell, looks like this. Surrounding every one of these plant cells is a little membrane called the middle lamella. The middle lamella is made up of calcium pectate. Guess how digestible calcium pectate is? About 99%. Okay? If you don't have calcium to make calcium pectate, you don't make cell walls. You don't make cell walls. What don't you have at the end of the day?
Grass.
Yield. Exactly. You don't have any grass, do you? So, is it important that you got these calcium, potassium, and these other elements? If you want any yield out of it, you better have them. Yes?
If you say soils that are permeable, does that mean like sandy soil?
Uh-huh.
And
Yep.
therefore, if typically around here we have more than 40 inches of rainwater,
Mhm.
rainfall, we have sandy soil. So what would we do to keep all these hydrogens from invading our cell walls?
That's a good question. Let's see if we can come up with an answer. So, sandy soils, are they generally higher or lower in organic matter? Lower. So what's one of our possible solutions? Get some more organic matter. And how are we going to get more organic matter in there without breaking the bank?
Manure.
We can put manure and we can grow more roots, can't we?
No roots.
Oh, yeah,
The root shedding. Root regeneration, root shedding. So there's several ways to get organic matter in that soil environment. It's again your soil bank account. Just like the bottom of that plant, that bottom 3 inches is your plant bank account. You got 2 bank accounts that you're actually working with. So if you deplete both, you know what usually happens. We have a lot of weeds, and then you're calling me on the phone, well, what do I use to kill? Okay? Which I don't want to hear, okay? Okay, so so here's our acid clay particle, and okay, this is our lime now. We're putting lime on here, and we're going to disassociate some of this hydrogen. It's going to make, obviously, water over here, and the calcium now is going to be associated with that soil. What we've done is we've increased the pH, right? We've limed it. What's another element that would be important as calcium in this kind of a situation? Not the same concentration, but definitely an important element. Magnesium. And why is magnesium important? What's an animal performance problem that you get if you don't have enough magnesium? Say that. I heard it.
Milk fever?
Milk fever is low calcium. Grass tetany is low magnesium. Yep. So you're going to have proponent, and I'm going to show you actually a very nice dead cow that died this year in April from grass tetany. So it does happen. Okay, here's some soil test results. This is from Arlington. I got rid of all the units and so forth out of here, but is there a difference between water and calcium chloride pH? So here's your water pH. Our quote standard pH is 6. Our calcium chloride pH is 5.5. Okay, we'll come back to this question. Here's our phosphorus is at 146. Our potassium is 111. Calcium is at 5.9. Magnesium is at 1.9. And here's boron at 0.07. It's a real soil test that Deb gave to me, okay? As you can see, I don't tell you who it came from. Okay, so let's first talk about this. Okay, so is there a difference here?
No.
Yeah, so which is going to be more true? Okay, let's think about pH. We just said as we increase the amount of free hydrogen, we're going to decrease the pH, right? The key word here is we're using this with water, right? Water is what? 2 elements of hydrogen and 1 oxygen, right? At least that used to be. Used to be. I'm not so sure anymore, but it used to be. So we're adding water, so what did we just do? Added 2 more hydrogens, didn't we? Okay? Which disassociated some of the other things that are going on here. So in the truth of things, the calcium chloride pH is actually going to give you a more true pH value than when you are putting these other hydrogens in here and increasing the hydrogen concentration in the water because it's a water base. We still aren't going to change the way we approach looking at pHs for probably a long time. But I want you to be thinking about in the future, maybe we ought to be looking at a different way of evaluating the pH of our soils. 146 on our phosphorus. About where would an average phosphorus or a reasonable phosphorus number be?
What's your question? Because there's 2 different numbers.
Okay, this here is 146 parts per million of phosphorus.
That number would be low compared to the average for a dairy farm in Whatcom County.
Yep, probably so. And is that number too high?
Compared to what?
Compared
like
to
recommendations by WSU in 1978.
Exactly, of course, exactly. And that's the problem. That's the problem because those recommendations haven't been improved. And guess what? They can't see me here, okay? I always get myself in trouble because when I argue with the soils guys, I says your numbers are too low.
Thank you.
For what's really going on in the real world. They're too low. But, and I've actually had to write retractions on this, so just to tell you how big a trouble I could get myself into. And you didn't think I could do it, did you? Okay? But that's a pretty high number yet. And the trouble with that is when you get way beyond what the plant will actually take up, way beyond that, it actually becomes almost a toxic element rather than an essential element. That's the problem, is the production, the yields, the plant's ability to take up those essential elements goes down. So what happens then? The soil environment actually increases in concentration with those elements because you're not taking them up. Okay? So what you put on, really, honestly, you need to be removing at the same time. That's really kind of the goal. If that soil becomes a huge reserve, or it's so big, then that actually is going to impede progress in the future. Now, it's going to be different for every farm and every field because every field is different. I just told you there are 87 different soil series. Every one of them is different. So making a single value or a single generic comment or statement doesn't really do you a lot of good. You need to use some thinking skills to work that thing through before you decide whether it's really a good number or really not a good number. Now, a number that's not really good, potassium here at 111 parts per million. For most, no, I would say for all of our forages, whether it's a cool season grass, alfalfa, all of them, that's going to be a low number. That's a low number. And this is going to have an influence then on other things that the plants are going to do. In terms of one thing is winter hardiness. Okay, this is kind of one of the things, there's two parts of antifreeze in plants. One is potassium and the other is sugar. Potassium and sugar. If you're low in potassium and you're low in sugar, guess what you don't have? Much winter hardiness. If you're in pretty good shape in them, Mother Nature can throw you a pretty hard blast and you can still survive it. Okay, so in this case, this isn't too good a number. Calcium is at 5.9, this is milliequivalents per 100 grams, and magnesium at 1.9. I like to actually see a ratio of about 10 to 1. So this calcium number is pretty low. And why is that number pretty low? We come back up here and we look at these pHs. So at this pH, you might think we're okay, but at this pH, you would know we're not okay. So this calcium number here is kind of telling us right here with that test that we're a little bit low in calcium. And again, if we don't have calcium, what are we not going to produce next year? Yield. It's going to have a negative influence. And then, of course, boron usually isn't a big problem with grasses, but when you get way down here like this, it can even start to become a problem with grasses. Usually it's legumes, alfalfa and clovers. They'll turn like crispy brown, and they really suffer, especially several times during the growing season. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, I really hammered this pretty hard, so I'm going to...
One question.
You bet.
How do you know the right phosphate for your soil type?
Good question. That first one was a gray, and that phosphorus test actually is more associated with high alkaline soils, high pH soils, and not acid soils. Okay, this test is more associated with acid soils. So when they ask for the soil test, they actually ask for the wrong phosphorus test. So you kind of have to know what your soil is to start with. But once you start getting these values up here in pH, it tells you really quick which way you should go. Yes?
According to Oregon State University, all their fertilizer recommendations are based off of Bray for the acid soil and Wilson on the high pH soil.
Okay.
And within Washington and the NRCS criteria to follow the phosphorus index are required to Bray test. And it's supposed to be in the low acidic range for Bray.
Okay.
As appropriate test, because they're going away from Oregon.
Okay.
No one's
Okay.
supporting that.
I stand corrected. Believe what he said.
So, like, just for example, if you're on sandy loam, where do you want to see the phosphorus? I'm a little confused.
Okay, I would like to see, this is, in my view, this is pretty low. At 9 parts per million is pretty low. The WSU Soil Guide would probably say this is about right. But I would like to see it probably double that number, maybe triple that number. And it depends on what you're going to grow, too. If you're going to grow grasses, they don't take up as much phosphorus as if you're growing legumes, i.e. alfalfa or clovers. If you're growing a mix of grass and clovers, what should you do? You better be aiming at a higher level for your clovers, or otherwise they're going to suffer. And if they're suffering, they're not going to be there the next go-around. So you need to be targeting what your nutrients are for the crops that you're growing in the field. Okay.
Especially for phosphorus.
Yeah.
And when we're looking at soil chemistry, some of those bases that are being knocked out for trying up the phosphorus in
Yeah.
the soil, especially in our iron soil.
You bet.
So we end up with a super high phosphorus test that everyone's saying is the end of the world, and our crops are showing deficiencies.
Yep.
So again, that fertilizer guide, I'm glad to hear you speak up for that. Something that we need to.
We need to really improve those. But you're exactly right, because when you have these acid-type soils right here, you have phosphorus changes, then things like aluminum and iron play in there, and they influence and impact the root system of these plants tremendously. In actually a bad way, not a really good way. Okay, so I'm going to really quick hit you guys are like about, this is talking about basically storage, your hay storage or haylage versus farm. That's all I'm going to talk about. Let's talk about field operations. This is one of the things that I want you to think about here. And I'm not going to really talk too much about specific varieties or specific crops, but something to think about in a principle. Pure live seed, and we promoted pure live seed forever. Pure live seed is a percent germination times a percent purity. That's what pure live seed is. Germination is the actual germination plus the dormant seed. Okay, this is, you see a problem with this? I didn't really appreciate this until I started working with some grasses where the dormancy here portion would maybe be 50, 60, 80%. Really. That changed everything. Still had a really good germination value. But when you started looking at the breakdown, this portion of it, what was actually would germinate, was very low. So you need to be looking at the seed tags and see how much germination is and how much dormancy is when you're going to buy your seed. Luckily for most of our cool season grasses, luckily for our alfalfa and our clovers, that is usually a pretty good number. But I have seen incidences where it's not as high as you might think. And the idea is, the quicker we can get a good solid stand out there, the less weeds we're going to have to fight later on. So read the seed tag before you spend money, because I got burned with that, and I suspect that once in a blue moon somebody else gets burned with that too.
What's acceptable in terms of
Low. You know, if you can have dormant seed of 10%, fine. Fine. But I don't want dormant seed of 50 or 80%. The idea behind the pure live seed in that dormancy was, if you're looking at conservation reserve or conservation programs of seeds that could sit there for years before they actually germinate. We don't have years to wait. Okay? We want that seed in the ground, and we want growth soon. You know, and actually, for me, if it's the seed, you driving out of the field, you come out and walk over to make sure you did a good job, and if the seed is starting to grab your shoelaces as you're leaving the field, that's just about the right speed of germination and taking off. That's what I like to see. I don't want to see it wasting my time. Okay? So when is the window open to successfully plant our cool season yields, our fields here? When's one of our windows of opportunity, our best window? I gave you several options. One was in March. One was at 30 pounds, remember? Now we had one in April to about mid-May. That was at 20. Then we had one basically in May. And then on the other flip side of that, then we had one that was in August, and then mid-August, late August to the 25th of September. And then the third one scenario was in basically mid-September to mid-October. So what do you think? What do you think? The middle one. Looking at that period in April to about the 15th, 20th of May, you can almost say the 20th of May is drop dead. The 25th of September is drop dead. Is drop dead. If you plant later than that, you've wasted your seed. I don't care how good a germ, I don't care what miracle, it's, you pretty much, the window is closed. And even last week I was getting calls, what about planting such and such now? I says, save your seed. The window is closed. The window's open, just like harvesting, the window's closed. The window is for here is about right then. Okay, let's look at yield then. And I'm going to show you a few data points on yield. Number of tillers, units if you will, out there over your acreage, and the weight of those guys. Okay, so if we look at something on plant growth, and how many normal harvests of silage would you get here per year? If you're doing a good job, how many would you normally get? I think the question was 2, 3, 4, or 5.
5. Minimum of 5.
5. 5. Should be out there about 5 times during the summer getting this yield off, okay? 5 times. What does this mean here then? How many times is this plant going to go through this cycle? 5 times, isn't it? 5 times, at least 5 times. Because you also have probably some regrowth in the fall after you took the 5th one off. And you may be right down here or maybe up in here a little bit at that stage. But down here, in this really the lag phase of growth, this could take days, weeks, months, depending on how much sugar is there, depending on what time of the year, depending how close it was grazed or how close it was harvested. This could take a long time. Between here and here, that really is where our big yields are going to come from. If we're grazing, for example, where would we want to put our animals in? Right here? No, we want to put them in somewhere up here, don't we? And then where do we want to graze them to? Here?
No.
How about right in here?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's graze down here, kick them off, let that regrow, come back and repeat that cycle. So if you're doing a good job grazing, would you get more than 5 grazing events in a season? You darn well better, hadn't you? Or you're really screwing up someplace. It's exactly so. And it depends upon all these things we were talking about, how many of those you're going to get. Largely, if you've got yourself into this lag phase. This is a big, big problem. Up in here, where it gets into this maturity level, it's just kind of like, you know, some of us with blonde hair, we're kind of up in this stage 3. Okay? Think we're working just as hard as when we were down here. Okay? But it isn't really working that way. But we've got ourselves convinced, believe me, that up here, that we are just as good as we were back here. Maybe even better. Okay? Your fields aren't any different. Your grasses, your alfalfa, isn't any different. So you need to be planning. You need to be thinking about. We were at a training that I helped with, in August in Idaho, and we walked into this grass field, and it was this tall. And everybody in my group was just oohing and awing. Oh my God, this is the best thing that we ever saw. And they asked me what I think. I said, this is all old junk. This is over the hill. This stuff is, the quality, it looks wonderful, but the quality's not there anymore. The ability for that to regrow is gone. Okay? So they always thought, of course, that I was nuts at that stage until we started taking it apart and looking down below. And here, everything was dying down below because you had all this tissue above ground and nothing happening underground or near the soil where the new growth is. So when you walk in your fields, I want you to think about what I'm standing on now is old stuff. This is ancient material. I need to be thinking about what is this going to look like 30 days, 40 days from now. Something you can't even see. That's what you have to see in your mind. Okay? If you take that approach, you'll avoid yourself into this situation down here. And many times you'll avoid yourself into this situation, and you'll avoid yourself in a grazing scenario of a lot of wolfie plants out there, a lot of weeds that invade, just a lot of problems because we don't think ahead. We don't think ahead. So just remember my blonde hair and where we are with blonde hair versus guys down here that actually have brown hair. Okay? It's another principle I want you to embed in your brain. Okay. Oh, Lord, I'm running out of time. I know that. So I'm just going to just talk real quick here. When you got a stand, what I want you to see is this go back to the photosynthesis and growth here. Okay, you see how the grass blades all are vertical like this? You see that? This is how they're capturing sunlight. What way is the legumes? See that? They're horizontal, aren't they? They're horizontal. So, in a mixed stand, where we have grasses and legumes, somebody always wins and somebody loses. Who wins here? Who's the winner? The legume. Every single time, the legume will win. Every single time. So to be a grass manager, you have to do a better job. Okay? So the plants in the very beginning here are trying to compete and get that sunlight. See that photoperiod triggers. And in this scenario, you've got to do a better job when you've got both of them versus you're growing one of them, either one of them, in a monoculture stand. Oh gosh, I'm just going to go through real quick. This is a bunch of, just some real scenario kinds of, we had some experiments that we finished in Buckley many years ago where we had separated, this is multiple varieties of early perennial ryegrasses and late maturing perennial ryegrasses. The earlies were cut 5 times during the growing season over years. The perennials, lates, were basically cut 4 times. You kind of lose, if you will, one harvest, usually during the summertime type harvest. But it's actually a combination of delayed first and delayed second, which puts you into a delayed third. But if you kind of take a look over the 3 years, this is our total dry matter yields. Minimum, if you will, nitrogen was put on here. Look at here, we're about 5.5 to 6. Here we're approaching 4 3/4. Here we're approaching 3.5 to 4. So most times we will get high production early on, and then it's going to start petering off. Going to go down. Won't be too long, and what's going to happen? About right here. You'll see it's time to do something different. So we may plant corn, we may renovate using those windows. We're going to do something to improve that production back up. Now with the grasses that I grow now, it's just the exact opposite. The first year is almost nothing. So the guys are just really angry with me because you're not producing me anything out there. So there's essentially nothing the first year. Second year, there's more. But certainly nothing like what they have envisioned in their mind. But they're a little bit happier, but not nearly happy enough. Year 3, okay, now we're starting to get around 10 tons of dry matter. They're happier at this stage. But it isn't until we get out here to about year 4 that we are actually getting our high yields. Our high yields. And so in those kinds of grasses, I tell the guys, because they ask, how long should this stand last? My response is, you should put in your will how you want this to be transferred to the next generation, because they are that tough. But they are just pussycats that first couple of years. You don't need to do much to wipe them out. So the mindset of our mindsets in growing forages is always has been like really great and then tapering down. In that case, we start lousy and we improve. Yes?
But why is that? Are you using different soil with different seeds? Is that why it's
different grass?
Different grass seeds. Choosing something different, something
Yep.
new.
Yep.
Different variety.
It's the Panicum brigatum that I was telling you about. That's the one. And that is going to be one of the things that we're going to be using as a high biofuel crop in the future. You're not going to grow it here because you can grow cool season grasses much better than we can. But some of our guys are going to be able to grow those. Now another aspect I want to quickly touch base with you guys on is talking about respiration and photosynthesis. This happens to be with ryegrasses, diploid ryegrasses versus tetraploid ryegrasses. You know, tetraploids just basically got twice as many chromosomes as diploids. Which one produces more yield?
Tetraploid.
Tetraploid. Which one's got the biggest stems and the biggest leaves?
Tetraploid.
Which one is the most winter hardy?
Diploid.
Very good. Very good. So let's ask, why are the tetraploids more productive? Why are they more productive? Well then, here is net photosynthesis. This is how much is actually carbon or photosynthate that's actually going to go to yield. You can see with the tetraploids we got a lot more net photosynthesis than we do with the diploids. Here's our dark respiration. Really not that big a difference between the two. They're respiring at night about the same. But where the difference is the efficiency in the high, bright sunlight. This is that period right here. This is this photorespiration. So during the hot, dry, hot, moist growing period of the season, the tetraploids are more efficient than the diploids. That's the reason why a lot of you will use tetraploids and do very well if you do some of the things we've already talked about. And if you have winter problems, then the diploids are always going to be your grass of choice. But for me, I think this is really cool that the same kind of grass, except whether diploids or tetraploids, will give you differences. This is actually on August 31st. This is our new growth right here coming out. That fall growth that I was showing you before. Talking about cutting height. What was that number again? 3. It wasn't 6?
No.
Wasn't 1?
No.
Okay, you got me sold. I'll buy it 3. Okay, so when you've got a combo here, sunlight costs us nothing, right? It's absolutely free. What costs us? Water nutrients, harvesting, managing, all this costs us money. Working the soil costs us money. All these things we have to somehow put into context with how we're going to make this work. So now, I just want to shift gears a little bit and talk about sugar. So, when you have photosynthate, that's really called sucrose, i.e. table sugar. And that's one glucose and one fructose. That's table sugar. Okay? Do they have the same sweetness value? Do they have the same sweetness value? You got a 50-50 chance here.
No.
Very good. No. Okay? So your odds are improving. The next question then is, which one is sweeter? Fructose. Why? What are all the drinks that you, everything you drink, do you see it glucose enhanced? No, no. It's all coming from fructose, isn't it? Because it's a much more sweeter sugar. Okay? Do you think your animals, whether you're making silage or whether they're grazing, do you think they're going to smell that? Do you think they can taste it? Do you think they want that? Absolutely. All the way around. So what's going to happen then is as you make these sugars right here, if it's all glucose, they're going to make starch. This is the sugar that we're going to put in the roots of our alfalfa and our clovers. It's not the sugar of our grasses. The sugar of our grasses is based on fructose. So you're going to have many fructose sugars in a chain, and at the very terminal end, you're going to have a glucose sugar right there. That's going to stop it. Okay? So that sugar is so important for winter hardiness, for regrowth, for the ability of the plant to do all of its functions. It's actually the most important sugar we've got in there. So as you're thinking about your management out here, thinking about maintaining levels of sugar in that stubble, because how much sugar do you think is in the root system? Almost zero. Almost zero. Matter of fact, I think, yep, I put it in. I want to make sure okay, here's our stubble. This happens to be with orchard grass. But here's our stubble, and here's our root system. And this is in percent sugars, okay? Here is, as it was cut, this is regrowth with 1 leaf. This is regrowth with 2 leaves, 3 leaves, 4 leaves, 5 leaves. Okay? You see this over here? Now, let's look at the root system. Is this even close?
No.
Even close to the amount of sugar? So, it's true that the roots of forages have sugar. It's also true that the roots of alfalfa and clovers, that's where all the sugar is stored. It's not true that the sugar in grasses are stored in the roots. Because they're not. It's in that bottom stubble. Okay, so we're just going to jump to this. Because this is one of your questions. Okay, question was, when do we have our highest digestibility of our ryegrasses? This is May. This is June. This is July. This is August. This is September, October. You see this horseshoe? This is July. This is the summer period. Pure leaves, right? No stems. Pure leaves. Here we've got stems. Here we could have some stems. Here we have never any stems. Okay, you see this? So our lowest quality is going to be produced in the summer. Our highest quality grass forage we're going to produce, we just did. We just did. And when you feed it to your animals, I'll bet you 10 to 1, you'll find that they will love this stuff that was just put up versus anything that you harvested in the summertime. Morphologically in the plant, what happened is the individual plant cells here are very large and very thin. Very large and very thin. At this stage of the game, they now become small. All of them. And they start to thicken. Less digestible. Here they are small and thickest. Here they are small but thinning, and here they're small and very thin. That's what's happening morphologically. Yes?
How does it look for orchard and 12 SQ?
Very similar. Very similar. Yep, very similar. Pretty much all of our cool season grasses are doing that here. Okay, I'm just going to pass that. Okay, this is mentioned about when you have issues out there, not a lot of material, but what they do grab is low in certain nutrients. This happens to be magnesium. You have grass tetany problems. Okay, so this is what I work on now. This is one study. Actually, I'm going to give this paper in ASA on Tuesday, looking at growing these switch grasses compared to corn for biofuel. This is one of our consumers. 2 years ago, one hydroplane on the Columbia used biofuels, not from switchgrass, unfortunately. It came from some other feedstock, but eventually I'm going to get them to use grass. And this year, all of them wanted to use biofuel because it has actually more energy than did the petroleum fuel. And they wouldn't let them do it. I'm kind of guessing that maybe next year they might. So this is just kind of giving you an idea. This stuff here is about knee high, a little bit higher than that. Very good material for grazing. Very good material for making hay. Very good material for fuel. Amazing how it is. So I realize that we've gone way over. And so I want to give you the test again. Come on. F5. Okay, and I know that, okay, so get your paper out. You're going to make my administrators happy now. Because you're going to take the test and I get to record that hopefully you're going to improve. Okay? So, which of these grasses is not commonly grown? Lolium peren, multiflorum, Panicum brigatum, or Dactylus glamourata?
Dactylus glamourata.
So, I'm not going to tell you the answer.
I was supposed to say it.
Okay, here's number 2. High quality grass forage. It starts with a cultivar in the seeding range. Yes, no, maybe, or depends on how I manage the crop. Okay, marking your answers down. Mark your answers down. Number 3, our windows of opportunity for planting. March and August, April and mid-August to late September, May to mid-September to mid-October. Or any time. Okay? Number 4, proper cutting height or stubble height for producing grass. 1, 2, 3, 6 inches, or it really doesn't matter. Okay, number 5. How many grass side harvests should you plan for and expect in a year, growing season? 2, 3, 4, or 5? Knowing that some people do even a better job. Okay? Highest digestibility ryegrass is going to be produced in what period of time? May, June, July, August, or September, October? Okay. Acid soils are typical in Whatcom County. What should be done? Nothing. Judge the acidity on water pH, on calcium chloride pH, or apply biosolids. Number 8, sugars and grasses are important for what reason? Increases nitrogen is applied. Decreases nitrogen is applied. Needed for regrowth and winter hardiness. Interacts with water and roots. Okay, major answers? Okay, I'll tell you the real answer. Real answer is you increase nitrogen, sugar levels goes down. That's really the answer. Increase N, sugar levels are depressed. The more nitrogen you put on, the lower that sugar number is going to go down. So in the olden days, when we used to empty all the lagoons in October, remember those? No, oh, you all don't remember that. Okay. And what did we do? We emptied the lagoons, but what happened out in the field? We stimulated all that new growth, didn't we? Because what happened with the protein levels and the regrowth that we stimulated? Up or down? Up. So what happened to the sugar levels?
Down.
And what, do you remember, you probably don't, 1988? 89? It was like 80 below zero up in Alaska for like 2 solid weeks. We were laughing our tootsies off down here. They were freezing up there. Guess what happened? It came right down on top of us, didn't it? And we lost thousands of acres in this region due to winter kill. Wiped it out. Even tall fescue, it wiped out. It was amazing. I could not believe my eyes. We drove for miles, and it looked like it was nuked. It was incredible. And why? Because we had such low sugars, because we had such large amounts of nitrogen that we applied with that manure.
We had a 100-mile-an-hour wind then.
We did. We had the worst of all conditions. It was really miserable. But that taught us a lesson that those sugars were really important. Yeah.
So you don't want manure on in October?
Well, let's just say we don't want to put so much on that we get this dilution effect of the sugars in the plant. We put too much on, what we're going to do is reduce those sugar levels. There's some, and then you got to play the game. What's Mother Nature going to deal with this? Because usually, to be honest with you, it's these early freezing periods is much more detrimental than freezing periods later on. The plants are already winter hardied up by that point in time. Now they're still young, and they're kind of in that lag phase or early log. They just are starting to get themselves in trouble. Okay? So that's what happened there. Okay, now, Steve's current work works with grasses for llamas, dairy cows, biofuels, or lawns. Okay, I know we've probably gone way over, haven't we? but I appreciate your time. Yes, please.
Thank our speaker.